All right. Hello, 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 and welcome to an amazing, life-saving, and life-changing hour ahead. My name is Latoyia Edwards, and I'm the primetime evening anchor for NECN. I hope you watch. I'll be there in the evenings tonight, so we'll definitely talk later about that. But over the next 60 minutes, you and I are going to have an interactive conversation. This is not just a webcast where we preach and you don't do anything. No, you have to work too. All of this is all about increasing ovarian cancer awareness and to educate people about this disease. There's a lot of things that you don't know about this illness that you should know. And it's not just a woman's conversation, it's a family conversation. So we hope your entire family will participate and at least watch. Now, this disease affects tens of thousands of people every year. Not just the patients, the entire family is hit with the diagnosis. Everyone is invited right now who's watching to ask questions anytime during the webcast. We may not get your question right away, but please let me tell you that we want you to ask questions. Ask questions that you think are dumb. Ask questions that you think you know the answer to. Just ask them anyway, because you may find out a little kernel of information that you didn't know. And so I'm encouraging you not to be shy. Here's the good news. I'm sitting in front of the camera. You are sitting behind that screen. So we don't even need to know your name. You can say Mickey Mouse wants to know, or Minnie Mouse in some case. We just need you to send in the questions. And the way you do that is by logging on to ovariancancerawareness.org. You can view this webcast anytime, by the way. If you have a loved one who may miss this webcast, we'll be sad that they missed them during the live webcast, but we want you to let you know that this will be archived on the website forever, so you can see it later on. But again, we want you to chime right in, send us your questions, and there's a little box that you can write your question to us, and we want you to do that right now and continue to do that throughout this webcast. Okay, so when people hear the words ovarian cancer, you're bowled over. You are bowled over, and you start to think, what am I going to do? And what you really need is a resource that is loving, that is caring, that is proactive. One of those resources is the Ovarian Cancer Awareness Coalition, the webcast sponsored, by the way. And to learn more about that resource right now, I'm going to welcome, and hopefully we've widened up the shot so we can see this beautiful face right here, Nancy Farrell. She is with the Patricia Cronin Foundation. You are the president. Thank you so much for being a part of this and sponsoring this webcast, which is so important.
Thanks, Latoyia. It's a great pleasure to be here.
So, like I said earlier, when people hear those two words, ovarian cancer, I mean, it would send not only chills, it would stop me cold, it would make my blood run cold. And you know, there's so many types of cancer out there that I know it's hard to sort of compete for dollars, compete for public attention. I know that sounds so sad when you talk about illness. Explain the reason why your coalition needed to be formed and its backstory about its being founded.
Oh, thank you. Well, my friend Pat Cronin was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in about 1996. And when I heard the words, I knew nothing about it. It was kind of a quiet disease. And a number of us spent the 4 years that Pat survived her diagnosis working very closely with her. And after we lost Pat, we formed the Patricia Cronin Foundation. We had the good fortune in 2002 to work with Rick Rendon and with the National Ovarian Cancer Coalition, and we formed this Ovarian Cancer Awareness Coalition because we found that what we really needed to do was combine all our resources to provide information. If I, a pretty well-educated person, didn't know anything about ovarian cancer, it was pretty clear that there were a lot of other people who didn't. So we thought we would combine our resources, do some education and awareness, and make women aware of what the warning signs are. And also, I think, in general, to make them aware of the fact that if they think there's something wrong, they should learn more about their body and go get it checked out. Because, sorry.
No, please, go ahead.
Well, because as you know, there's no easy test for ovarian cancer. So it's really important for people to understand the symptoms.
And getting back to the Ovarian Cancer Awareness Coalition, who falls under this umbrella?
Well, I'm happy to say this year we're joined by the Dana-Farber Brigham and Women's Cancer Center. We've worked with this group for years, and you're going to hear from Dr. Ursula Matulonis today. Also, the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. DPH has a terrific preventive division, and we've worked with them for several years, and they've been very involved in trying to get out the word, and also being much more involved in educating people about ovarian cancer.
And it's great to have that type of partnership and that type of communication. It's great to know that you have backup. Do you know, and backup from the state?
Yes.
Because not every state, unfortunately, is keyed into an illness that it seems like it's a woman's issue, but it's really a family issue.
Agreed.
So let's talk about the initiatives or campaigns that the coalition has done in the past.
Well, we actually have done many similar things. We started doing public service announcements because we wanted to get attention. And the goal of those public service announcements is to drive people to our website, ovariancancerawareness.org, where people can learn the symptoms and be educated, and also donate and get involved in the campaign if they'd like. So PSAs are one element. Something like this webcast is another, because we're helping people learn more about the disease and how to recover from the disease and how important it is to be diagnosed early. The website's an important tool. We use it both for outreach and for people to reach us. So again, I'll say ovariancancerawareness.org. And we also reach out on a regular basis through our friends in the legislature, through public health, and through a great other varieties of opportunities. So the coalition has used these tools. This year we have a great banner on the front of the State House for a week, which we hope people will notice, and we'll take them to the website. In past years, we've also we've turned parts of the city teal. The teal ribbon, is the color for ovarian cancer. And so people will say to me, "Why is the Zachem Bridge teal?" And I'll say, "You need to go to our website and learn more about it." So I think what we're trying to do is reach people in a variety of ways and where they are. One of my favorite stories is that there was, I think you'll see this public service announcement today. There was a man driving home, and he heard one of our spots. And he recognized the symptoms and went home and told his wife that she had those symptoms and she should be checked out. And the sad part of the story is she did have ovarian cancer. Oh. The good part of the story is it was stage 1 and she had surgery and she was in great shape.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yes, exactly. So that's the kind of really exciting story that the coalition likes to hear.
Oh, I love that story, and I love the fact that you told it about. Usually it's us women hounding the guy to go to the hospital, but the husband was keyed into his wife's symptoms, and it was great. Okay, so what's the coalition doing this September for Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month? I know you talked about the stuff at the State House. I saw that. It was beautiful seeing that banner. Anything else?
Well, I think the PSA has been redone this year. What we're trying to focus on is the awareness of early symptoms, because one of the things is that, as a lot of people say, ovarian cancer whispers, and so it's often seen as something else, maybe I'm just not right, or maybe, and so what we want to do is encourage women, if they've had these signs for 10 days to 2 weeks, to see their doctor and to make sure that they get checked out. So a new PSA, new information on our website, this webcast, and outreach to as many women and men as possible.
Wonderful. Now, there are going to be people who are sitting there listening. Hopefully, they're formulating their questions so we can have them answered later on. If someone wanted to help the coalition right now, what can they do?
They can go to ovariancancerawareness.org, and on the left side of the page, the home page, they can check on a name, Carrie Johnston, and send her an email and ask her how to get involved.
And talk about finances. Do you need our money? Do I just give you our...
So sure. Yes, because the state has helped us. Dana-Farber Brigham Women's Cancer Center, the Cronin Foundation. We have limited resources that we can put into education and awareness and prevention. But if there's anyone who would like to get involved at the financial level, we would be happy to talk.
You, Nancy, have talked about all that you were motivated to do by your friend Patricia's story. We have to know a little bit more about Patricia in the time that we have left.
She was a wonderful woman. She was exactly my age. We worked together for many years. She was an activist. She worked in the legislature representing a number of groups. And she fought this disease really hard. And when she was first diagnosed, there weren't many. There were breast cancer support groups, but there weren't ovarian cancer support groups. In essence, she formed her own support group with all of her friends. But when we lost her, our foundation, primarily what we do is help support groups, because we think that part of the recovery process is being happy and looking forward to a productive life.
So how do you help the support groups?
We help fund them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We help pay for some of the things they do and for some of the therapy. And we have them in a number of places. And we're a small foundation, but we do that in Pat's memory because she was a terrific friend.
And one good friend of mine, Beth Shelburne, who has been a part of this for many years, she lost her friend. And it's so funny that, you touch one and then it sort of carries on and carries on. When you lost Patricia, is that what you said? I have to do this because you didn't know what to do with your grief?
In part, you know, you hope in life that you can turn grief into grace at some point. And in her memory, I think a number of us got together and tried to figure out how to do that. And because she was a person of such energy, because she worked on women's issues and had a lot of friends, we thought it was really incumbent on us to carry on what she had started. So I hope in some measure, well, I know if I weren't doing this, she'd be sitting on my shoulder right now.
Nancy Farrell, thank you so much for
You're
sharing
welcome.
about the Ovarian Cancer Awareness Coalition. I know you'll be back to join us later and answer some more questions from people who are listening to your story. And I love that you said turning grief into grace, because people want to take action. That's a message that I'm going to take from our conversation. I hope you'll take that message as well. Remember, folks, this is a conversation, so we want to hear you, and we want to hear you your questions in our question and answer segment. That's a little bit later on in this webcast. Another important feature of this webcast is you get a chance to see all of the hard work that these guys are doing as far as these television spots about ovarian cancer and awareness. We're going to show you one right now. I believe it may be playing, or it's been played or currently is playing on television stations. Here is the first one you get to see.
As a nurse practitioner, I'm good at diagnosing other people's problems, but missed my own ovarian cancer.
She complained of abdominal swelling and things like that.
Then one day, my husband was in the car.
Symptoms may include feeling bloated.
And I heard an announcement about ovarian cancer. I thought that sounds like Colleen.
He wanted me to get it checked out.
I insisted.
I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer,
They caught it at an early stage.
where the survival rate is over 90%.
So get the facts on ovarian cancer.
I did, and I'm still here.
We're still here.
There are so many heroes in the fight against ovarian cancer. We're about to hear from one of them right now. Someone, if you are ever diagnosed, you hope you get to meet, and you hope you get to enlist as one of your teammates in fighting this. And of course, that is you. And I know you probably don't like to hear the word hero, but that's really what you are. Dr. Ursula Matulonis from the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. You're well known, obviously, in the ovarian cancer area. And I just want to give you a little bit of just some of the titles that she holds right now. She's the medical director of the Gynecologic Oncology Department at Dana-Farber Brigham Women's Cancer Center. She's also an associate professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School, and she apparently does not sleep. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so I know for the people who are watching, people have various degrees of understanding ovarian cancer. Let's just put it out there, the definition, let's define it.
So ovarian cancer is, it's a little bit of a changing definition, but I think up until 2 years ago, when we thought that the cancer actually came from the ovary, it's a cancer that comes from the ovary. We've learned a lot more in the past couple of years that a certain percentage, and we're finding out more and more that that's an increasingly higher percentage, actually the cancer comes from the fallopian tube.
Right.
So changes in the fallopian tube, and because the fallopian tube and the ovary are very close together and nearly contiguous, those cancer cells develop there and then essentially shed to the ovary, and then disseminate through the abdominal cavity.
What are the symptoms?
So the symptoms are sometimes vague, and that's part of the...
It's so scary, you know,
exactly.
when you hear that
Absolutely.
vague and
Yep.
the unknowns about this already. I'm sorry, I'm already reacting. Let me be quiet. What are the symptoms?
So the symptoms are, and you heard Nancy already kind of allude to some of them, are abdominal pressure, abdominal pain, abdominal distension, meaning that the abdomen is more bloated, eating and feeling more full, and then pain sometimes, abdominal pain, pelvic pain, and constipation alternating with diarrhea. So some element of gastrointestinal symptoms as well. Occasionally shortness of breath if somebody has liquid around their lung, or there's pressure up against the lung, making it more difficult to breathe. So those are some of the symptoms. And I think the symptoms are, certainly they can come in two varieties. One is that they can signal somebody that there's a mass in the pelvis, just like Nancy had mentioned of somebody who had heard one of the commercials,
Right.
and found an early stage mass. So that's something that's important, where the symptoms can lead you to the physician early. Unfortunately, a lot of times those symptoms mean that the cancer has spread into the upper abdomen, and that's why a screening test for this cancer has been so elusive, so difficult to find and really make use of.
So is the standard pelvic exam that many women get every year or every 2 years, is that something that will spot this?
So there is a recent publication, although it really wasn't that recent. It's been reported for the last year or two now, but the task force just presented their final recommendations, U.S. Task Force on Prevention, of a approximately 80,000 woman trial performed in the U.S. That either screened women for ovarian cancer with an ultrasound and a CA-125 versus nothing.
CA-125.
That's a blood test that basically is a protein that's shed by the cancer that can be picked up on a blood test, and if it's elevated, it could signal that something's wrong.
Okay.
And in the women who ended up getting screened, there was not a higher percentage of early cancers picked up compared to the non-screening group. And the women who underwent the screening actually underwent more unnecessary surgeries. Wow. And some of those women suffered complications from those surgeries. So that's the problem with this cancer, is that the screening test has been hard to find.
Great. So the pelvic exam wouldn't get it. It would be an ultrasound, and it would be a
CA-125, and they have not been found to be helpful. And certainly the internal exam yearly can pick up something early, because biologically there are two separate types of ovarian cancer. One that's picked up early, and then the other, which is unfortunately the more common one, where that cancer starts to grow. And it's very hard to find it on an early basis. And
you said with the just sticking with the internal test, it'd be picked up early in some rare cases. How would it be? Is there something different at the
pain.
Just the pain?
Yeah, okay. Exactly, pain. Okay. And I think that's why the fallopian tube has been so exciting, because that really helps us identify a spot to look at, so we can figure out, well, what causes those normal fallopian tube cells to change from normal into precancer into cancer, and can really help with a much more educated understanding of how this cancer forms, that will then inform a better screening test.
Gosh, and it's so sad that it's great that we're this far, but it's so frustrating because we want to be here.
Of course, absolutely, but definitely small steps all in the right direction.
Let's talk about, I guess, why are women diagnosed so late? Is it because the symptoms are so vague?
It's really because of the biology of the cancer, in that as soon as those cells are starting in the fallopian tube and in the ovary, and they drop onto the ovary, they are disseminating within the abdominal cavity. And when symptoms start, unfortunately, the cancer is more disseminated. So that's why. And the lack of screening test. Because if you had a screening test and an ability to predict which women will get ovarian cancer, then you could do potentially prophylactic surgery, or change the natural course of that cancer.
What are the treatments?
So the treatments have been, I think this is a very exciting time for understanding ovarian cancer from a molecular standpoint. That definitely informs better treatments. So getting back to your question, when someone's newly diagnosed, the standard has been first surgery, then followed by chemotherapy.
Right.
What is a new trend is, in some circumstances, to actually, once the diagnosis is made, is to do chemotherapy first and then do surgery, followed by more chemotherapy.
Why that switch?
It really makes the surgery less, have fewer complications for women, shorter hospital stays, fewer problems in the post-operative course.
And so if a woman who's listening to that right now, because I'm always somebody who, if I hear something new and it seems like it might be working, and let's say you have a doctor who's not as familiar with that, should you maybe say, listen, can I get a second opinion here? I really want to talk about doing chemotherapy first before the surgery. I mean, how do you broach that conversation? Would you recommend?
Well, I think women have to understand that they, just for symptoms leading up to the diagnosis, that they need to be proactive, and really make certain that their physicians are understanding what symptoms that they're having, and if they're not being listened to, they need to switch docs. The same is true after someone's been diagnosed, and again, it has to be a very open, honest conversation that the patient has with their physician,
right?
Because everyone's got to be on the same page.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that as a doctor giving us that advice.
It's true.
So that's some great advice. I guess I'm wondering, what should women do right now? What should they do right now? If you're me and I'm 36 years old, I hope I'm healthy. You know, I mean, what should I be looking for? I watched a story on some talk show yesterday afternoon where a woman had ovarian cancer. She was pregnant, and her baby was hiding one of her ovaries, but it was a high-risk pregnancy, so she got a lot more ultrasounds, and they had she had a C-section, and all that came together to discover that she had ovarian cancer. And that, and I knew I was coming here to speak with you, so I said, let me save that little nugget and get your take on this.
Well, I think it's so the age of diagnosis right in the middle, so half the women below this age are diagnosed and half the women above, that age is around 60.
Okay.
So more often than not, that average age is around 60. It's not unheard of, certainly, to have women in their 20s and 30s. It's more rare.
Okay.
But I think that sounds like it was picked up just kind of incidentally on an ultrasound. And obviously, hopefully, she's okay.
She survived, which is good, and
That's
she has
good.
a 9-month-old baby.
The baby's fine, right? Which is good. So what should women do right now? I think is understand any kind of symptoms that they're having, and if they're not having symptoms, great. They should know about their family history. So, is there an increased family members who have either breast cancer or ovarian cancer? So there are two genes that can directly cause ovarian cancer. Those are called BRCA1 and 2. BRCA1 tends to be breast and ovarian cancer, where BRCA2 is breast, ovary, prostate, melanoma, pancreatic cancer. So if somebody falls into one of those families and they get tested and they're shown to have a mutation in one of those genes, they can prophylactically have their ovaries and fallopian tubes removed. To really significantly reduce their risks of developing an ovarian cancer, where their risk is increased beyond somebody on the normal population who doesn't have that gene.
We'll hold our conversation there. You opened up a can.
Oh, sorry.
I love that. I love that, because we'll save. I know when many people here get my what removed, they proactively, they voluntarily do that without being sick. Many people probably think, hold on, let's pump the brakes. But I think in the Q&A section, if you have questions, I think that'd be a great question to ask.
Gotcha.
I know I'm saving something. So Dr. Matulonis, we'll stop there. You are, I could just sit and talk to you all day. Boy, you make it so accessible. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome. And thank you for being here.
Oh. Listen, I'm just hanging out with you, so that's excellent. Okay, so let's see, we're moving on right now, and we're talking about the Q&A segment. Of course, we really want you to chime in. I know I keep hitting you over the head with that, but it's going to be a good conversation if you participate. But first, we'd like to show you our newest television spot that's currently being shown in Massachusetts for this year's awareness campaign. Take a look.
When I went to the doctor with a backache, I expected the ultrasound to find a kidney stone. What they found was ovarian cancer.
Ovarian cancer symptoms are hard to detect and can be misinterpreted. They include feeling bloated, prolonged indigestion, abdominal pain or constipation, or, as with Anne, back pain.
My cancer was found early enough that it responded to treatment.
We're making progress in our fight, but we still have a long way to go. Ovarian cancer can be beaten.
I know. We're doing it.
Okay, we are back. Now, it's one thing to hear from Dr. Matulonis about the symptoms and what we should look out for, and even Nancy Farrell about the resources that are available to you if you are diagnosed with ovarian cancer, but it's another whole conversation to have if you are diagnosed with ovarian cancer. I mean, for those of you who have the illness, you know what it's like to go through. And I think it's comforting to hear other people who are experiencing what you've experienced, as someone who's actually survived the illness. It's always encouraging to hear from that person. You just saw a television ad featuring our next guest. Her name is Anne Tonachel. Did I say it correctly?
You did.
All right, good.
Good
And you are a patient of Dr. Matulonis, so
I am.
you are very fortunate.
I am incredibly fortunate.
And you're also a survivor.
I am.
So let's talk a little bit. You and I shared a little bit earlier, and I heard a bit of your story. But let's go back to 2005. And I'm sure you're like many people, focused on, family, and you had a list this high to do everything every day. And what were you experiencing that made you sort of take notice of your body a bit more?
I had a backache, and I'm not a going to the doctor person.
Mm-hmm.
So I had the backache, and I changed my office chair, and then I got something to put underneath my feet, and nothing was working, and the backache got worse and worse. And I had had kidney stones previously.
Okay.
So I finally called my primary care physician and said, guess what, I have another kidney stone.
Self-diagnosis.
Yeah,
Doesn't
right,
that just
that's
get
right.
us Dr. Anne Tonachel?
Right, you got it. So fortunately, being the good doctor that she is, she said, well, that might be so, but why don't you come in?
Mm-hmm.
And she examined me, and it was one of those times where she had been very chatty and the room got very quiet.
Ugh.
And she said, well, I want you to go downstairs and have an ultrasound.
What did
And
she see? Did she tell you what she saw?
she didn't tell me what she saw.
Don't you hate that,
We actually had a conversation about that
Oh,
afterwards.
good. I mean, I'm
We
sure
did.
she's a great person.
She
but
is a great doctor.
Mhm.
She is a great doctor, but and different people need different things
Right.
along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So I had the ultrasound, went back to work, and then I got the phone call.
Ugh.
And that's what I call it, is the phone
So
call.
tell me about this phone call.
So I was sitting at my desk and answered the phone, and it was my doctor, and she said, you have a large mass on your ovary. My secretary is calling Dana-Farber. So we live in Boston. We know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
So within 3 days, I had been to Dana-Farber. I had walked under the sign that says Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, which seems huge. That those words seemed like they were 100 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
And met with a gynecologic, I got to say this right, gynecologic oncology surgeon.
You're good. Yes.
Well, and had surgery the following Monday.
Wow.
So it was all very fast, and I am incredibly fortunate for that, because that doesn't always happen for all women.
I know there's a scale of stages from 0 to 4.
4, right.
And where were you diagnosed
I
at?
was 3C. So
Wow.
that was not good. But I was fortunate in that my metastasis was to the lymph nodes, and in my case, those were removed during the surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So that predicted a better outcome for me.
And the surgery, in addition to your lymph nodes, what else happened?
Complete hysterectomy, appendectomy, fluid is removed and tested. It feels, everybody knows women who have had a hysterectomy, and somehow a hysterectomy, when it's for cancer, seems different.
Mm-hmm.
It feels a little like being gutted.
Oh, yes. All the plumbing's taken out,
Yeah,
basically,
right,
yes.
exactly. And all the parts that you think of as being a woman are suddenly gone.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, I recovered from the surgery and then started seeing Dr. Matulonis.
But let's stop.
Yes.
Let's talk about that recovery, because you just slide over that. And then I recovered and ran a marathon. I mean,
Right.
that recovery had to be something.
Well, it's recovery from major abdominal surgery. It takes time, and each day you walk a little farther to get around the block, and each day you feel a little bit better, and you take a few less pain pills.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you're moving. And I was so fortunate, because I had family and friends who just really sort of cushioned me and took great care of me.
Right.
So I was fortunate, and I mean my family started meeting with Dr. Matulonis. She started telling us the options, and for me, one of the options she laid out was a clinical trial. And
did you have any hesitation for that? Clinical trials,
sure.
sometimes you hear that you say untested, maybe wacky side effects that no one knows
Right,
about.
all those things. But Dr. Matulonis and the research nurse were very accessible to us and explained things more than once. They got more than one phone call. And in fact, at one point we said, we have to see you again. So we trooped back in and it was explained to us. And I actually had the option of 2 trials and had discussed it with all my children as well as my husband, and we decided on one for various reasons about the side effects.
Okay.
And fortunately, at the same time, my research nurse matched me up with another woman who had had the same clinical trial.
So you had a mentor.
So I had a mentor, and she was just amazing. And many years later, we're still good friends with her family.
You say with her family because she's no longer with us?
That's right. That's right. She did not survive her disease.
Wow. And so how long have you, after you were paired up, how long did you get to enjoy her company and her mentorship before she passed?
Her cancer reoccurred toward the end of my treatment. So the first time I met her face to face was in the clinic.
Okay.
And we had planned it. We had been talking, and we had planned it, and spent a few minutes talking about how you aren't what I thought you'd look like, and all that kind
like
of
a blind
thing.
date.
Right, exactly, exactly. But she was brave, and she really taught me about courage and learning how and taught me about educating myself and my family educating themselves about the disease. And she also opened the possibility to me that ovarian cancer wasn't the end of life, even though she died.
Wow, you still held on to that message?
Absolutely.
Even after she passed?
Absolutely, because I began to meet other women who had ovarian cancer. We began talking about the dreams that we had, and we got lots of encouragement from doctors, from nurses, from our families, from knowing other women who had survived for many years, by going to support groups where we met women who were either in similar circumstances or newly diagnosed or who had been diagnosed 9 or 10 years ago.
Wow.
So all of those things were sort of empowering.
And you seem like a little petite package of power. I have to tell you, when you come in contact with you're not like me, like blah, diarrhea of the mouth immediately. But you are somebody who, you don't seem like you're somebody who's. Did you have to jump out of your comfort zone to sort of open yourself up to this new world of,
yes,
of support
yes,
and offering support to women?
Yes, absolutely. But it's just been an amazing journey to me. I mean, every now and then I hear somebody say cancer is a gift, and it's not a package I ever would have opened if I had known what was in the box. Mm-hmm. But it has presented me with life opportunities that I don't imagine I would have had any other way. And meeting women and their families who have such amazing strength, it's good.
Well, I want to end our conversation for now because you'll join us for our panel discussion. So if you have questions for Anne, please send them to us on ovariancancerawareness.org. Get your questions into the question box. But you have 3 children. You didn't have any grandchildren before your diagnosis.
Oh, I had some.
Oh, you had some before your diagnosis?
But not all of my children had given them to me yet.
And so after you got the diagnosis, did you put in an order for a rush delivery?
I mentioned it would be a good idea. That it was something I needed to do, was to see my youngest son's children. And they came along really rapidly.
How many months after?
Not many, just about the required time.
9 months, okay. Well, you have a good son. He listens very well to his mom. And thank you so much. I hope you will join us again at the end of our conversation for a Q&A, because your story is so important. We have so much still to talk about. We didn't talk about your husband and his reaction, your children, really the family response to it. I'm sure you'll have a different take than everybody else. Thank you again for opening your heart and telling your story and wearing your beautiful teal and being the powerhouse that you are in that little petite package.
Thank you.
Thank you. So she is absolutely great, as you can see. I think we have one more television ad for you, and while we do that, we're going to switch things around. And this is the time, my friends. This is the time that we've been promoting, where we have our Q&A segment. So this is the time when you join us right now. Get your questions in there. If you've asked one, ask another, and we promise we'll get to as many as we can. I'll see you in a second. Watch this spot.
You can learn a lot from numbers. 15,000. That's about the number of women who died from ovarian cancer last year in the U.S. 93%. That's the survival rate if detected early. And 45, that's the age when the risk of ovarian cancer begins to increase sharply. Do you know the warning signs for ovarian cancer? They're often subtle and easily confused. No matter what your age, talk to your doctor. Get the facts. Recognize the signs by visiting our website.
I had a pain in my left side, which was bothering me, so eventually I went to the doctor just to get checked out. I knew there was something not right, but I didn't know what it was. I was totally in shock when I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. I do feel that the fact that I went to a doctor early helped me in my road to recovery. Just to think that you might have something that could be wrong with you, you really, really need to get it checked out. Ovarian cancer can be beaten. I know because I've beaten it.
Okay, this is the golden time, folks, the time we've been waiting for, where we get to hear from you. Number one, thank you so much for sticking with us so far. I hope you've benefited. We all hope you've benefited from the conversation so far. And now it's time to be interactive. Look at the stack of questions that we have. Keep them coming our way. We'll get to as many of them as we can. The first question is from Wendy, and Wendy asks, how accurate is genetic testing? Should all immediate relatives take this test?
It's a good question. So I'm going to assume that the question is about BRCA1 and 2 testing. So it is a test that is looking at certain spots in the gene. So it's a very long gene, both of them are. And definitely over time, more data has been obtained about exactly where in the gene the mutations can be. So the entire gene is not necessarily sequenced, but the spots where the mutations have been found previously have been. Now, every once in a while, a mutation is found in the gene that is unknown in terms of the significance with regards to predisposition of ovarian and breast cancer.
Okay.
So that data is stored. The company that does this test is in Utah, and it's been a whole issue around, should companies own genes or not, etc. But nonetheless, one place does it, so they do have a lot of information on those genes. They are accurate. I mean, it's done in a CLIA lab, so meaning it's a laboratory that is that the results you can use to make decisions make clinical decisions. It's not a research test; it's a clinical test.
Right, and they're accurate. And should all immediate relatives get tested?
So if somebody is positive, then yeah, you should meet with definitely a genetic counselor, and that genetic counselor will review the family, other diagnoses, and then start to reach out. Obviously, the family member can get the test or choose not to get the test. I mean, that's their own decision.
But should we be clear, and I don't know this answer, just because you have the genetic makeup or you have this in your body doesn't mean that you will get this illness.
That's correct. And this test, so having a BRCA1 or 2 mutation in the gene, accounts for up to 20% of a special type of ovarian cancer called high-grade serous cancer.
Okay.
So 80% of the rest are just sporadic. But you're right. If you do have a mutation, the risk is high, so it's up to 60 to 75%. So it's not, so it's high. So you'd want to act upon that test if you know you have the gene.
Okay, and this is interesting, and just to pass the mic to you, Anne, you didn't have any family members who had this illness before, right?
I did not, but I did do the testing.
You did?
I did because I had some distant relatives, and I had a grandmother who I knew had died of something abdominal, because that was in the day before.
Exactly. Right.
It wasn't even diagnosed as cancer.
She had a
she
stomach
had
illness.
Something down there.
Technical term, right.
So I did have the testing, and I was fortunate that it was negative.
And is this testing covered under our normal health insurances? And if so,
you have the microphone, you can start.
Well, it depends on, you have to meet the criteria of having certain relatives in your family line in a certain closeness, that and even age of when they developed cancer. Mm-hmm. For instance, I had a cousin who developed breast cancer before age 40, so that made me eligible for the test. If she had gotten breast cancer at 80, that would not have made me eligible for the test.
And Nancy, if you don't have resources, what can you do? Can you guys help them?
Well, that's a good question. We've actually never been asked that question. We have limited financial resources. It's fairly expensive. I don't know, Ursula, do you know if there are resources?
So there definitely are. One is we can appeal to the insurance company to try to get them to pay for the test. But there are some resources, correct, if somebody really needs the test. And we're starting to test anybody who has a high-grade serous cancer, regardless of family history. So we're because the implications of a positive test are so huge, not only for the patient, but also for family members.
Okay, well, I know I asked like 7,000 questions. I just jumped people in line, so I'm sorry. Okay, so this question is from Chris. If you have an IUD and thus don't get your menstrual cycle, is there something else you should look for?
So having an IUD in place should not change the symptoms that you would have if ovarian cancer is present. So the abdominal bloating, distension, shortness of breath, pain, those symptoms will occur despite having an IUD in place.
Well, that's good news to hear. Okay, so let's see. What is the plan to educate the medical community so that doctors, primary care, gynecology, etc., take these vague symptoms seriously?
Yep. So I know, and Anne and Nancy can speak to this potentially better, but there are survivors who are part of a group that actually go to medical schools and teach medical students about the symptoms of ovarian cancer and what it means.
That's accurate. The program is survivors teaching students, so it's medical school students. And we go in at one local hospital. We go in every other month and talk to a group of students about our personal experience. And as I said before, I was so fortunate in the way that I was diagnosed quickly, but for many women that's not true. And so our energy is really to make everyone aware of what the symptoms are and pay attention to them.
Nancy, do you have anything to add?
No, I would just say the National Ovarian Cancer Coalition does a terrific job on this and has had a program for quite a few years. So that's NOCC, and you could go to their website and learn more about it. And also, I think there are a lot of really good physicians who are very much aware of these kinds of issues. So I think we're turning. We're making progress on these kinds of things. I know I have this conversation every year when I go in for my annual with my GYN and say, I hope you're asking these questions. So we're making trouble.
Oh, good. Love it. Okay, this next question is from, and we may have touched on it. Tracy writes, my mother has ovarian cancer. Should I do something differently to monitor my risk?
So I think, Tracy, I think the most important thing is to understand the rest of your family history, and understanding your mom's family history, and then thinking about also what type of ovarian cancer she has and the stage. That's really important because there's certain types of ovarian cancer that are genetically transmitted, high-grade serous being one of the most common. Any high-grade tumor is more often transmitted from obviously a mutated gene. So understanding your family history is the key thing.
Okay. Am I blocking her? I want to make sure everybody
sorry.
sees. No. I want to get my big head out of the way so they can see you. Can you tell us about the high-grade serious cancer study that is going on at DFCI, Iris?
So we have I think that one of the most important aspects of how we think about ovarian cancer is definitely changing, and that is how we run clinical trials. So up until these past few years, ovarian cancer was thought as one cancer. We know that based upon the histology or the pathology of ovarian cancer, it comes in many different varieties. High-grade serous, and serous is spelled S-E-R-O-U-S.
Okay.
Is the most common type of ovarian cancer, and it has certain features that are distinctive and make it distinctive compared to the other types. So it's very sensitive to types of medications that interrupt repair of DNA. There's something called mucinous, there's something called clear cell, and there's an endometrioid. So all these are different, and I think moving forward, we're going to base the design of clinical trials on the histology of the tumor.
Good.
So that's one piece of important change that's gone on. And then secondly, understanding the genetics better of these different tumors. So for example, mucinous tumors tend to have this specific mutation, not a genetic mutation, but or a passed on genetic mutation, but something called a somatic mutation, meaning just the cancer cells have this mutation called KRAS. So an answer to this question is we definitely have trials that are ongoing in high-grade serous cancers looking at drugs called PARP inhibitors.
Okay.
And those are drugs that target DNA repair and that kind of Achilles heel that high-grade serous cancers have, that they have difficulty or they can be tricked into not repairing DNA and thus die.
And so it's going well, the study so far?
One trial is ongoing with a drug called olaparib and a drug called cediranib. We just started a trial this week, the first time that a PARP inhibitor is being put together with a drug called a PI3 kinase inhibitor. This is based on mouse data from one of my colleagues at the BI Deaconess Hospital,
right.
Gerberg, Wolf, and Luke Cantley. That's data's coming out in a publication very soon, showing that the combination really is quite lethal to the tumor.
Good.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear that. Okay, so this question is from Kristen. What do I have to do to get my doctor to check for ovarian cancer? I have many of the symptoms, and they have lasted almost a month. Now, with the last 3 months having some of the symptoms on and off.
Yeah. So I think for advice, I'm gonna hand this over to Anne. But certainly, I would continue to keep trying, but just for a short period of time. And then, if the doctor's not listening, I think you have to fire the doctor.
I think that's exactly right. If the doctor's not listening and you're asking specifically about that, you're telling him about him or her about your concerns about ovarian cancer, you find another doctor pretty quickly. And also, I think women, we have to learn, first of all, to know our own bodies and know when something is not right, and particularly if it persists, then you do something about it. You trust yourself and your body.
Any advice, Nancy?
No, second that.
Okay. So Chantal writes, I love that name, at what stage is ovarian cancer usually diagnosed and why?
We can answer that together.
Yeah.
Yeah, so unfortunately it's advanced stage, so stage 3 and stage 4 too, but mostly stage 3.
Right.
That's true.
What it
okay,
is.
stage 3.
And why?
Because again of that biological feature of this cancer, that as soon as it starts to form in the fallopian tubes and ovaries, that it starts to spread and gets, again, direct access into the upper part of the abdomen where the liver is and the diaphragm and the spleen, etc.
So it spreads quickly?
It spreads quickly, that's right, because it doesn't have to go through necessarily blood vessels. It just breaks off and spreads.
Okay, so at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, are Dana-Farber Cancer Institute survival stats for late stage 3 and 4 different than the national average? This is Iris.
Yeah, no, Iris, it's a good question. So there have been other cancer centers around the United States that have looked at their survival stats, and we've just had this discussion lately, and I think that we have not publicized our stats just because It's complicated to look at statistics. I can tell you that ours are the same to better. But again, we don't, we're really focusing on new therapies. We obviously follow standard of care for all of our diagnoses. So I'll stop at that. I think, that's one way of looking at things, but it's not always the best way of looking at things, because you really want to take and look at each patient individually to give them the best treatment.
Okay. Is there an association between hormone replacement therapy and ovarian cancer?
Yes, so there is. It's certainly been associated with breast cancer mostly, taking estrogen and progesterone in. It does increase risk of ovarian cancer by a little bit. So the answer is yes.
Okay. What kinds of tests, will my healthcare professional want me to take?
I'm not so sure what that is. I would think that you would think about just for a normal cancer-free individual, or somebody who has diagnosed with cancer in the past, you'd want to do mammograms yearly after the age of 40, and colonoscopies after the age of 50.
Okay. Does the diet affect the risk of ovarian cancer?
Yeah. So that's a really interesting question, and has been looked at, milk products, fat intake, etc. I think the bottom line is there hasn't been one specific type of diet that has increased the risk of ovarian cancer significantly. So no.
Okay, and that's good. But how about preventative stuff? We get all this advice about, I don't know, organic or not organic. I mean, did you change your diet, Anne?
Well, I think we've always eaten in a fairly healthy manner. We don't eat much meat.
Okay.
Just try to be very aware. Certainly exercise. Keep moving, and but I don't know. I mean, I sometimes have looked back and thought, well, what did I do to make this happen? And that's very unproductive thinking.
Right.
So
I'm sure it wasn't a burger. I'm sure.
That's right.
No, it wasn't a burger. So I think we certainly all want to do what we can to be proactive, but that's a really hard question. I don't think we know those answers yet.
Yeah. I mean, I think diet has been more implicated in cancers such as colorectal cancer, with high fat intakes and low fiber intakes. Breast cancer certainly has some dietary risks. Ovarian cancer, not as much. Okay. But certainly I have women who decide to follow a certain diet post-diagnosis. And I think as long as it's a healthy diet, low fat, making sure you get all your vitamins and minerals in, and exercise is really important.
Okay. Okay, so here's a question. Can oral contraceptive pills reduce the risk of ovarian cancer?
So the answer is yes.
Really?
Yeah, it's one of the protective means for ovarian cancer. I think that it's in large population studies, any duration of oral contraceptive use seems to reduce the risk of ovarian cancer.
Does it protect the fallopian tube in a way? I mean,
well, that's a good question. I think, as we understand more about the different histologies and those different molecular makeups, we may find that the use of oral contraceptives actually reduces the risk of one type of ovarian cancer rather than another.
Oh, okay.
But yes, and I always get asked the question, well, so if I have ovarian cancer, should my daughter take the pill? And the answer is you just have to talk with your physician. Usually we would not recommend the pill as a preventative mechanism. That's right.
Okay, here's a question. If there are no accurate screening tools, how is OC, ovarian cancer, diagnosed?
Right. So just as you've heard from Anne and you've heard from Nancy, it's found when somebody has enough complaints that they bring those complaints to their doctor. So abdominal distension, pain, eating, and feeling more bloated.
And certainly physical exam.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had known what the symptoms were, about 3 months before I was diagnosed, I was going to a wedding, and I put on my go-to-a-wedding dress, the same dress I wear to many weddings.
Our dress, right.
Right, our dress. And I noticed that it was tighter around the abdomen. And my immediate thought was, boy, I better take care of that. You
Right.
know, I better exercise more and eat less. That was a key symptom.
But I'm so happy you brought that up, because how many of us, so many times, I mean, you know, once you have a child, you know, certain times of the month you're bloated. I mean, so, and back pain comes with bloating. So, I mean, with the menstrual cycle. So it's just, how do you know? It's so.
But it's all, it's an accumulation of those things and the fact that they persist.
Okay.
And that it's not normal for you. It's not, I mean, some people, before they get their period, they always feel bloated.
Right.
So that it's a different kind of bloating.
And that's important to say, you know, because you only know. We're sitting here and we're thinking, okay, that's a common symptom. And you said you have back pain.
I did.
And is that common as well?
So it can happen because as the if there's fluid in the abdomen, that fluid can cause the back muscles to stretch.
Okay.
So you can have back pain. Sometimes if lymph nodes are involved, they're called the retroperitoneal lymph nodes. Those are very close to the spine. If they get big, they can press upon small nerves, also causing back pain too.
So Nancy, on the ovariancancerawareness.org website, you know, people are going to watch this, you know, you sort of become overwhelmed when you're in the middle of a webcast. What about the information that's there for just those quick facts, those quick questions?
There are quick facts on the website, and they have the symptoms that we've been talking about. I remember Pat Cronin, when she was on a trip, calling and saying her abdomen was distended and she was short of breath. And so those are classic signs. Of course, again, at the time, I had no idea. But we have simple facts on the website. Our goal is not to scare anyone. Our goal is to educate, inform, and arm people so that, you know, if they're going to their primary care provider and they're feeling uncomfortable, they feel that they can ask, that they can, you know, persist and get treatment. So I think those are the key issues. And, you know, we welcome inquiries on the website as well. And we hope that people feel like they're better prepared to face whatever they have to face.
And so if they have an inquiry, really briefly, there's a doctor or somebody you can direct them to?
They can ask a question online and we'll get it to Ursula or to someone else, and we'll try to get an answer. And there's lots of resources on the website. We have some resources for younger people as well. It is rare, but it does happen. So we try to cover everyone, and we want women to feel healthy and comfortable and educated.
Wonderful. Well, can you believe 60 minutes has gone by? This is the quickest 60 minutes I've experienced in a long time. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you so much, Anne. Thank you so much, Dr. Ursula. We appreciate you guys are just such powerhouses in this unfortunate illness. But when you sit beside me, I think that better times are ahead with this illness. I really do. Thank you for all the work that you do and for taking the time to talk to the women here and the families here. My name's Latoyia Edwards. I am so happy to have been a part of this as well. If you'd like to learn more about ovarian cancer, its symptoms, its treatments, its resources that are out there for you if you've been diagnosed, the Ovarian Cancer Awareness Campaign, log on again to www.ovariancancerawareness.org. www.ovariancancerawareness.org. Tell your friends to watch this broadcast. It'll be archived and available on the website as well. Watch it on demand. I love you all. We love you all. Have a great afternoon and be healthy.